In the very first trial, there were 3 clients of ours who were teenagers at the time they were abused. One of the clients was being sent for what was called diabetes maintenance, which should have been just a few weeks. She was there for over 400 days. And because she was there on Medicaid dollars, was able to also extort North Carolina Medicaid to keep her there and profit off of the abuse every single day of her 13-year-old life. And that's just one of the hundreds of children that were hurt at Cumberland Hospital.
Welcome to the John and Marc podcast. We're live again in Puerto Rico. We have a very special guest, Floyd from the Floyd law firm. This was actually another guest of ours DM'd us and was like, you have to have her on. And he pulled some favors and got her on. And she was here, and we're very excited to speak with you. We found out before this that this is your first podcast ever.
It is.
We will take care of you. We are very excited to chat with you today. We were getting into your background before we started recording. But the most interesting thing I wanted to talk about is you actually used to play for the dark side for over a decade.
That's right. I would say that when I was a defense lawyer, we didn't call it the dark side.
Yep, that was the good side?
Yeah. In fact, defense lawyers would say that they're the ones who are the good and that the other side is the bad. So it's been a sort of funny shift. But yes, I was a defense lawyer for almost the entirety of my career. I was a partner in the managing partner and founding partner of Butler Snow's Richmond, Virginia office. And I did that work representing primarily what the plaintiff's bar would call the bad guys, pharmaceutical companies, major manufacturers, auto manufacturers in big litigation in the United States.
Gotcha. So who were some of your clients that you defended and some of the cases you worked on the defense side?
So have you heard of Johnson & Johnson?
I have.
Okay.
Small corporation.
Yes. So I represented Johnson & Johnson in what defense lawyers would call pelvic mesh, but plaintiffs lawyers call TVM. I represented Bayer Pharmaceutical in the Yaz litigation. I represented the auto manufacturers, both foreign and domestic, in cases. Do you remember Paul Walker?
Yep.
Fast and the Furious?
Yep.
I represented Porsche in his case against his family's case against Porsche after the crash, which was cool because we got to meet Jay Leno.
Oh.
But yeah, so I represented largely manufacturers, foreign and domestic, in, again, what defense lawyers would call bet the company litigation, high stakes cases.
So when you're here, we're at Mass Torts Puerto Rico. When you're in this room with all Mass Tort lawyers, are they like, Lee? Like,
well, she got absorbed already.
Yeah,
to the plaintiff side.
On the plaintiff side, but
I want to be very clear. The absorption was not easy. There was some major hazing involved. Aaron Copeland, Catherine Cornell were especially, Todd Matthews were especially prolific in their hazing of me. Honestly, it's not a joke that at the very first AAJ, I'd been a plaintiff's lawyer for 9 days. And 2 weeks earlier, I had been in depositions against lawyers at the ale stock firm. And 2 weeks, and they were sort of contentious. And 2 weeks later, I walk into AAJ, plaintiffs only. And one of them ran to the corner and said, she's got to get out of here. She's not allowed. She's a defense lawyer. And that sort of continued for almost a year, where a lot of plaintiffs lawyers in the mass tort space believed that I was a mole and very seriously did not want to work with me or co-counsel with me because they were convinced that I was not doing this for the right reasons and I was going to take everything back to the defense.
Hold on. Did anyone ever ask you to be a mole?
No. I mean, I've laughed about this.
Are you a mole?
I am not a mole that I'm aware of. If I'm a mole, there has been no compensation and there's been no promises made. No, the real truth is that, and I don't think that plaintiffs lawyers necessarily appreciate this, in order for me to leave my defense world and become a plaintiff's lawyer, I had to fire all of my clients. And clients that had been very good to me and had treated me well and helped my career, and I think I had hopefully helped them as well. But firing my clients was jumping off of a bridge, and there was no coming back from that.
Why did you transition?
So, a number of reasons, but coming up, I had my second daughter in 2020, peak COVID, April of 2020. I was child counsel for Johnson & Johnson in lots of cases coming down from the MDL. And I also had other cases that I was defending for J&J. And one of them was against a lawyer in Virginia who had sued J&J for $75 million. I kicked his ass, and he got no money. And at the conclusion of that case, he called me and said, I think you have good politics. Why are you doing that? You should be a plaintiff's lawyer. And I said, no, 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 no. And he said, come have breakfast with me. And I said, no, 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 I will not do it. And he said, I think you're going to want to hear about this case that I have. And I said, fine, I'll meet you for breakfast. And I have two young, very, very young girls at the time, babies. And I met him for breakfast. And he said, 10 miles from where we're sitting right now, there is a hospital system that is not like any hospital you've ever heard. Children from around the United States are sent there on Medicaid dollars for hundreds of days at a time. They are abandoned by the system. They are often abandoned by their parents and guardians. And there is someone there who has been abusing every, or likely most, of the female patients on intake for 20 years. There has been systemic physical and sexual abuse. There are people who are now in prison. This is a major, major case. We're going to have to try it one day. And I think you should come join the team and try this case and represent the kids. And what was supposed to be a 10-minute breakfast became 3 hours. And he told me the story about Cumberland Hospital and these children that had been abused. And that night I went home to my own children who live a wonderful, privileged life that is very protected and safe. And a week later, I resigned from Butler Snow because I couldn't unsee the thought that children had been hurt so badly and so viciously. And that's when I became a plaintiff's lawyer.
The children were at the hospital for long-term inpatient medical treatment?
Yeah, so in order to qualify to be admitted to this hospital, you had to have both a chronic illness and a behavioral illness. So the classic presentation would be PTSD from a childhood trauma and diabetes. And in the first trial, for instance, one of the 3 plaintiffs we had, we tried the case a few years ago. In the very first trial, there were 3 clients of ours who were teenagers at the time they were abused and were very, very, very young adults at the time of the trial. One of the clients was being sent for what was called diabetes maintenance, which should have been just a few weeks. She was there for over 400 days. She spent 2 birthdays there. And the medical director who sexually abused her on intake was then responsible for every single decision regarding her medical care. And because she was there on Medicaid dollars, was able to also extort North Carolina Medicaid to keep her there and profit off of the abuse every single day of her 13-year-old life. And that's just one of the hundreds of children that were hurt at Cumberland Hospital. And when this case came to me and I started working on it, it changed my life. The case changed my life. And since that moment, I have pivoted my career, and I'd like to think hopefully used my skills from being on the bad side to now using them for good. And the majority of my practice is defending children who've been sexually abused.
What was the outcome of the case?
So I tried the first case to verdict on behalf of 3 girls, and we obtained a verdict of $360 million, which was the largest verdict in Virginia history and one of the largest sex abuse verdicts in U.S. history.
And was it sustained on appeal?
It's on appeal right now. We believe that, and it'll probably be on appeal for a while, but we believe we're strong in the arguments and that our clients, most importantly, the moment that the jurors looked in our clients' eyes and unequivocally said, yes, it was their verdict, that moment of validation where there was no hesitation from the jury, it was the most impactful thing I've ever seen happen, in which total strangers did the right thing for our 3 clients. And that had a rippling effect to not only the other clients, but everyone else, I think, who's thinking about bringing a sex abuse claim against that defendant.
What happened with the rest of the clients? You represent like a mass amount of them?
So there were 50, roughly 50. Those are all continuing to be set for trial, a few at a time. And just because of the way it works, they will continue to be tried in the coming years. But what I have now been able to do is that same defendant that owns Cumberland Hospital in Virginia also owns hundreds of other residential treatment centers all over the United States that has a similar model of taking children who are being sent on Medicaid dollars from vulnerable backgrounds that may not have parents or guardians looking out for them and checking on them. So they're being admitted to these facilities for hundreds of days, not just a week or two, and they are systemically abused. So now I have a number of these cases against different residential treatment centers in Arizona, almost 100 children that have come to us and said they need help.
What's really sad about this is that this is not an isolated situation.
Not even close.
We talk to attorneys on a regular basis who bring up issues with individual doctors, who bring up issues with facilities, who bring up issues with non-medical facilities, but places where children are, whether those are juvenile detention facilities or schools. And the preying on the vulnerable is disgusting. And I applaud you for your work in making change happen. Are you seeing like ripple effects of change actually being implemented based on your efforts?
Without divulging anything that's attorney-client privileged information, I can say that I'm really proud to see changes that are being made in these institutions and the way that they're operating, from when we started the Cumberland litigation 6 years ago to now representing clients in Arizona in similar situations. Already there are changes that have been made to these companies and these systems, and I know it is because of the bravery of the Cumberland Hospital clients in coming forward and refusing to be silenced and telling their story. There are already administrative and other security changes that are being made to protect kids.
That's like the first step of the change that needs to happen. I don't understand how these people that run these companies are not like criminally liable for knowing, like,
They should be.
you can't just have all the kids get, not all, a significant amount of children getting systematically abused and raped by care providers across multiple organizations and not know about it. This is insane.
You're right. And the outrage should be felt by all of us. Anyone, anywhere who has a child in their life. You don't have to be a parent. You don't have, anyone who has a child in their life should be outraged and disgusted about not only abuse, but for-profit abuse.
Yes.
Abuse in for-profit systems, particularly on Medicaid dollars, where they're preying on children who are the most vulnerable in our population. 3 years ago, the U.S. Senate looked into, in a rare bipartisan move, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate looked into these residential treatment centers, particularly those focused on services for children, and they issued a scathing report called Warehouses of Neglect that essentially found that after hundreds and hundreds of interviews and case studies and interviewing, including some of my clients, this abuse in these systems was so systemic, they attempted to call the CEOs of these companies to the Senate floor to question them, and several of the companies declined to participate entirely. They would not appear in front of the U.S. Senate. And that's how brazen they are. They would not appear in front of the U.S. Senate because they do not care, and they will continue to operate these systems until they break. But I'll say this. Working with a lot of kids who have been abused as teenagers and are now either older teenagers or very young adults, we should feel good about the generation of kids that are in their early 20s, because the tenacity that these kids have shown in standing up to huge multi-billion-dollar corporations and refusing to be silenced is the most extraordinary act of bravery I've ever seen in my life. We should all feel good about this generation of kids.
Are these organizations attempting to claim that it's an isolated bad actor
Yes.
versus systemic
Yes.
problems?
It's always, we didn't know. I will give you an example that I can disclose some of it because it's public knowledge. One of the clients that I represented in Virginia, he was largely nonverbal, on the spectrum at the hospital for serious intensive services. A young man at the time, he was 12 years old. He was experiencing seizures, and his caretaker at the hospital, who was charged with taking care of him, got frustrated. And so she went into the kitchen, put water into a Tupperware, put it in a microwave until it hit boiling, came back and threw it on him while he was seizing, where he then sustained third-degree burns all over his body. And the police were eventually many days and months later notified, and she was convicted and she was sent to jail. But the argument is, look, we did the right thing. We called the police. That's what comes back is, well, we, the owner of the company, we called the police after this happened. The hospital shouldn't be in business.
No.
You hear these stories, and there are other stories of a client I had a very special client I had who was sent to a residential treatment center after being sex trafficked when she was a child. She was sent to a residential treatment center for intensive therapy relative to the PTSD she sustained as a child. And the psychotherapist charged with treating her raped her hundreds of times over 400 days, put trash bags on the windows of a trailer so that no one would see him.
Oh, that's a red flag.
But that was allowed to occur for hundreds of days. That residential treatment center, she was there for 400 days. So when we talk about abuse and abuse of children, there's really nothing that is worse. I think objectively we all, and that's where the U.S. Senate landed. It may be the only thing that the Republicans, Democrats universally agreed on. Senator Wyden had no problem reaching the conclusion that there is no place in this world for the abuse that is occurring at residential treatment centers throughout the United States. Yet still, they continue to exist.
And they're still funded by Medicaid.
They're still funded by Medicaid, and they are also regulated differently than traditional hospitals. However, the defendants also want to claim in these cases another defense, in addition to it was one bad actor, we didn't know, they were acting unilaterally. The other defense is, well, this is medical malpractice. So it's all subject to medical malpractice caps, which means that your damages are limited in some states to very, very little. And of course, then the question is, who believed that it was medical malpractice to sexually assault a child?
Yeah.
That isn't an improper diagnosis. That's an intentional tort.
I don't even know what to say because I have a building rage inside of me.
No,
I know these things happen when you hear the individual stories and the gross negligence of these companies. I'm enraged right now.
it's really upsetting me.
It is so upsetting. To be very candid, it's a hard area of law to practice in. I'm really blessed that my paralegals have been with me for a long time, and
It's a heavy load for them.
they were trauma informed before that was even a concept that anybody knew about. One of my paralegals actually has a counseling degree, and she specializes in art therapy for children who've been sexually abused. And so she's particularly good at helping us with children who are then deposed through this process and have to walk through it with their parents, because this litigation is unlike anything I've ever seen or known to exist anywhere. The abuse of children is bar none the very hardest litigation to be a part of.
There are a number of litigations going on across the country right now. Juvenile detention centers is a big one. We saw it expose so much systemic abuse in Maryland that they had to change the law
To reduce their exposure.
Yep. We see it happen in Illinois. We saw the settlement happen in
LA.
California, in LA County. These aren't isolated incidents. That's just in juvenile detention facilities. And then, talking about the situations that you brought up. In your belief, with a true understanding of what goes on and how these actually manifest into these specific incidents, what can truly enact change to stop this from happening at the scale that it's happening?
Look, I think it's going to take a societal shift. We all have to stop turning a blind eye. I also now have devoted a significant portion of my practice to representing women who were sexually abused in California women's prisons. There's another consolidated litigation that's moving forward in California, and it's a different type of litigation. It doesn't involve children or adolescents. It involves women of all ages, but the stories of these women are no different. When they've been raped by a prison guard, when they've had STDs transmitted, illnesses transmitted, and then a failure to summons medical care after the prison guards have raped them or otherwise abused them, digitally penetrated them. I mean, the number of calls we get is almost weekly of women who have been abused at these prisons. And
these aren't corporations. This is the government.
right. No,
These are government-run entities.
And it's true in Maryland, in Illinois, in California, and in most states, it is going to require legislative change. And I think the legislative change and the bonds that taxpayers are now going to either have to vote on or legislators are going to have to vote on, I think until it starts hitting all of our pockets and we understand that it implicates everyone. It does not matter who you are. Sex abuse, this pervasive sex abuse, whether it's in churches or institutions, schools, but we all have to stop turning a blind eye. We have to stop turning a blind eye. There has to be greater accountability across the board. And it's all of us being vigilant at schools, being vigilant in our places of work, being vigilant when we hear someone say and believing survivors.
Yeah.
When someone has the courage to come to you or says to you in your life, when a family member or a friend says, look, I know you know lawyers, I think something bad happened to me, believing them, giving them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, that's where this ends, is believing and helping those who we believe have been hurt and knowing that we can do something to make it change. Because you're right, Maryland is a perfect example of a legislative change that hopefully should be a referendum to all Maryland taxpayers that what happened in those juvenile detention centers is reprehensible.
You are right. When you bring up the women's prisons, that this goes beyond children. If you look
women's prisons, male prisons.
Yeah, it goes beyond women too.
But it's not just in those situations. You've got the Uber and Lyft consolidated litigations happening right now, where these platforms are attempting to put their hands up and say, this had nothing to do with us. Somebody got into the car. I don't know who's driving that car.
Nothing we can do.
You literally were the app that the person pushed the button, and you had this person show up and take this person in their car and kidnap them and assault them, and this is happening, and they're reporting it, and then your response is what? They're not doing anything.
Refund you your ride.
They refund you your ride.
Well, I'm also involved in the Roblox litigation. Yeah. Objectively, we can say if there is a platform that is allowing children or anyone of any age to use a gaming system all over the world with 60+ million users a day, shouldn't we as a society be concerned that Roblox was reporting thousands of cases of child abuse to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children annually on their platform? Thousands of instances annually of child sexual abuse that is getting reported from Roblox to NCMEC. That should be the glaring flag for all of us, that this can't happen. There shouldn't be thousands of children being abused on a platform annually.
That's what gets reported.
Right.
Just what gets reported. And
correct.
I've told you.
We know that there's way more than that.
Absolutely.
Listen,
no question.
My children right now are 8 and 11. And they ask me all the time because their friends all play Roblox, and I tell them absolutely not. And we had a play date at our house, and the only thing that the parents were talking about was what was happening on Roblox and what the kids were telling the parents about the things that were being said to them and being asked of them. It is so pervasive. Every single parent had a story, and the fact pattern was relatively similar.
I even saw a podcast clip. There's a famous comedian, his name's Chris. He's on the podcast and he's joking about Roblox, and his kids are off. He goes, "Hey kids, what did I say about Roblox?" He goes, "They're like, it's filled with pedophiles." Like, he was like, his kids know. They're little kids, and he was joking about it. But he's like, my kids can't play on Roblox because it's just filled with pedophiles. Like, if you're joking about it in the public forum that an app is filled with pedophiles for abusing children, and we still allow it to exist, and it's like no one thinks it's a big deal, is insane.
And I think the question is, for what? For what? So we can have a video game?
No, Roblox is a publicly traded company.
Exactly.
It is driven by a board and by stock prices and investors. That is why Roblox exists. To make money.
Off children.
Well, and I'll say this too. What we're talking about right now are mass tort or consolidated action sex abuse cases that are many, many people coming forward with the strength of other people coming forward against hospitals and churches and private corporations. I also get calls every week from sex abuse survivors who've been abused in their home, abused by a daycare teacher, abused by someone that the reality is I know there's no collectability. I can put them through 3 years of excruciating litigation, but there's not going to be an outcome that gives them any type of financial security for treatment they need because it's a preschool teacher who's 22 years old and has nothing. And I never want clients to go through litigation unless I feel like they're going to come out of it on the other side with some feeling of vindication or doing what's right and just. And it's hard because for so many survivors that call me, that call my colleagues, we don't have good answers for them. We don't have good answers for what the legal system can do for you, at least in terms of civil litigation.
Even criminals, incredibly tough.
It's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult. And so I continue to believe that there is so much power in survivors who come forward and use their voice, however they use it, whatever their path is, and however they best choose to use their voice. The more voices that join the chorus, the better we are going to be. That has to be the solution to reducing or eliminating abuse in our society, because I think for as much as we hear on the news right now about roadblocks in LA and Maryland and Illinois, we are only scratching the surface.
We only know about those states is because they put legislation in where
right.
people can now seek financial compensation from them for damages. But that doesn't mean it's not happening in every other state. It's just that there's no vehicle for us to get any compensation for the victims right now. So they're not being exposed as much.
That's absolutely right.
If you're not thinking it's not happening in every other state and every other facility, it definitely is.
That's right. And it's credit to the good guys, the plaintiff's bar, which now I'm proudly a part of, in mobilizing state by state by state to provide these avenues of recovery for survivors who've been deprived for decades. I mean, honestly, kudos to all the people who are sitting here in this room who have come together and fight these monster battles to do it. I mean, I'm lucky in addition to being partners with my husband at Floyd Law, I'm also of counsel to Rick Meadow in his terrific law firm in Arizona, where
The Meadow Law Firm.
That's right, the Meadow Law Firm, where we're proud to be on the frontier of litigating sex abuse cases, and we know that we have the resources to take it all the way to the final line. We will do whatever we have to do to support survivors through what could be years, if not a decade of litigation. I will not, and our firm will not say no to them. We will keep going. But there's a lot of people who can't do that. So it's a credit to everyone who's here with us at Mass Torts Puerto Rico that have put the resources behind these cases because they're hard.
How do we enact more change? Because I look at the states that have put in laws to change things, which has been great, but it's also kind of showing all the other states that they don't want to do it because their exposure and liability. If you're a state that I know this is happening, I want people to get compensation, but if we pass this law, we're going to be on the hook for billions of dollars because we've been systematically abusing people in our prisons and our medical facilities. It's like, how do you enact that change to get legislators to do the right thing when it's putting them on the hook to pay the bill because they're the ones who did the damage?
I think the reality is politicians are elected.
Yeah.
Politicians are elected. And so the question at the end of the day is, who do you vote for in the ballot box that allows systemic abuse to occur? Who allows the systemic abuse to occur and does nothing? You want to be tough on crime? You want to be tough on crime, but you're not willing to support sexual abuse survivors, children that were hurt in juvenile detention centers? Get out of here.
I haven't seen this debated once in any campaign.
Winter's coming. I think, once again, the plaintiff's bar is getting very sharp because you are right that legislatures are pushing back on why they should have to foot the bill for decisions that were made 20 years ago. And the answer is because everybody gets to go cast their vote. And we get to talk to politicians about why they support or don't support survivors' rights. If you want to escape, if you want to be anti-survivors' rights, I dare you.
Just saying, Lee Floyd needs to be on that ballot.
Don't put me on a ballot. I'd burn it down. I'm the one who I want to keep doing this forever and represent as many people as I can.
Are you working on any litigations outside of sexual abuse cases right now?
Yeah, I am. So I'm also, I tend to focus most of my practice on representing women and children with obviously a lot of the sex abuse work and also women who've been sexually abused. But I'm also on leadership in the Paragard litigation, which is an IUD that, when defective, causes women to have unnecessary surgical procedures all the way up to and including a hysterectomy. And so I like balancing some of the really heaviness of the sex abuse cases with what sometimes can feel like a different but more poignant help for women who have done the right thing and made a responsible choice to get an IUD, and then it breaks, and representing them and saying it shouldn't have happened to you, you did nothing wrong, feels
Yeah.
really good too.
Yeah. Also, you did nothing wrong, and now you can't have children.
Right. Or it's going to be hard for you to
Yeah,
get children and you don't know why.
Yeah.
This litigation's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, Paragard has been going on for a long time. We just tried the first case, which is, if you want some tea,
Yes.
is actually against my former law partners at Butler Snow.
Oh.
And in fact, pretty much the entire defense side were my partners at some point in time, which is a very weird thing to walk into the room and know that I've been partners with pretty much everyone on both sides of the V when I
Yeah.
walk in. But I do Paragard. I'm also on the Suboxone litigation. I'm on leadership, which is something I feel pretty passionately about too. Suboxone is a prescription drug for individuals who are recovering from opioid addictions. And the Suboxone that was administered in a film format can actually dissolve the teeth of those who are trying to, again, do the responsible thing and overcome opioid addiction, and then they have their teeth dissolved as a result of that very medication. I think probably, I feel like my calling is working with the most vulnerable populations, whether it's those who are in addiction, those who are children that have been abused. I like helping people that are in really tough situations to see if there's a way we can help them out.
You're making headway.
I hope so.
It sounds like it.
I think one voice at a time. One voice at a time. And the number one thing that my sex abuse clients say to me, particularly the youngest ones, those who are still children or teenagers, they all say that at the end of the day, this really isn't about money, because there's no amount of money that's going to take away or resolve abuse. They all do it because they know that if they, by coming forward, they prevent one child from being hurt in the future, it was worth it. And I have to believe that our collective efforts here, if nothing else, if one child is saved from being hurt because of our efforts, that's the only thing that matters.
Sex abuse cases, aside from the one-off events that people pursue, have over the past 6 months or so become a case type that lawyers who have traditionally looked into mass torts have started really looking at. What would you say to attorneys, whether they are PI attorneys that are looking to sort of start dipping their toe in those types of cases, or mass tort attorneys who've just traditionally pursued cases against pharmaceutical companies or medical device companies? What would you say to them if they are thinking about now pursuing these types of cases?
They're the hardest cases you're ever going to work on in your career. They are the double black diamond of litigation. Anything that I've done before this, and I thought representing pharmaceutical companies was sort of the upper echelon of intellectually tough, hard cases at the very highest levels. That pales in comparison to sex abuse cases. While I welcome with open arms every member of any bar, plaintiff or defendant, that wants to join this revolution and help those who've been injured, who have been abused, I say at the same time, please proceed with the highest degree of caution in educating yourself, in endearing yourself to a lawyer who has done this before, no matter how many years you've been practicing law, because it is a completely different area of the law. It is so much harder. The client population is so much more challenging in the way that you have to protect them and guide them through this process. I really hope that those who are representing survivors rise to the occasion, because it's hard. It's really difficult. and we all have to rise to the occasion on it.
I've heard from many people in the space, in the sex abuse litigation space, not only is it's hard work, it's very taxing on the staff. Because not only is like you're as the lawyer, it's like these are very serious issues, very tough litigations, but like the staff, the paralegals they're doing, it's very heavy weighing on them. Like very heavy conversations you're having, dealing with. They're invigorated to fight this fight, but it isn't a simple car accident here or there. Is a whole nother thing that your entire team has to be unified on this vision on going after this, because it's a big commitment emotionally and mentally to attack these.
Until I started representing survivors, I had never had the experience of a client, let alone a young client, calling me to say that they wanted to take their own life. And knowing that part of the impetus was that we had worked on discovery responses a few days earlier, and they had to relive all of the traumatic events of their life in writing and didn't have the resources to manage that emotional flooding. And because I'm the only person, or my paralegal is the only person in their life, they call me as the last resort. I wasn't prepared for that. I have made every mistake under the sun, and I tell people, anyone who's thinking about going into sex abuse litigation, please call me or my staff. I will help you in whatever realm I can. My staff will help, because we didn't appreciate the gravity of what we were getting into with even the very, very, very best intentions, because it is so hard. And now we know to do things like my staff, my entire staff, both at Meadow and at Floyd Law, has a code word. Anyone at any point in time who works on these cases can say the word refresh or text it on a group chat. And that just means that they're going to walk away, and it might be for the rest of the day. It might be to go for a walk. It might be that they need to take 2 days off. We don't ask questions. We have a lot of members of our staff who have their own stories with abuse. We all need to be cognizant of respecting that, because sometimes they will get a call from a client that they don't expect that triggers something in their past. And so we give additional PTO. We have a code word system. We try to make sure that our staff is supported. In fact, I'm religiously devoted to my therapist, who is wonderful. I have therapy on my calendar every single day for my entire staff, everybody who works with me, to see that no matter what is going on in the world, I make my therapy session once a week. And I encourage everyone that works with me to do something similar, so that they are taking care of themselves, because truly we cannot put the oxygen mask on others until we're taking care of ourselves.
It's amazing that you do that. The intake team, the point of first contact, is so extremely important in these cases, that they are not only trauma informed, but they are handling these conversations with grace and honesty with regards to expectations. How do you go about training your intake team to handle those conversations?
So that's a good question. The first thing is, we don't outsource. On our sex abuse dockets, if you are a client of Meadow Law or Floyd Law, you are working directly with the lawyers and my staff members at these firms. We aren't outsourcing to vendors. Our survivor clients come directly to us, and we try to keep the same staff person or attorney consistent with that survivor, so they're not speaking to somebody new every 6 months throughout the process. We do the best that we can to try to make sure that there's dedicated staff members for each client. In terms of training, I'm pretty cognizant about how we need to talk to survivors, and that involves not only detailed scripts and trauma-informed training, but I also have any new member of the team shadow existing members of the team, including me. I usually ask that all the staff members do at least one intake with me. I handle a lot of the intakes myself, and I do a lot of the client calls myself rather than farm it down, because I think it's important that I know my clients and their stories. And I will ask different junior members of the team to join me so they can hear how I deal with certain questions that frankly are hard. And there's always a new question I don't know that I was going to be faced with every single time I learn something new. And I try to keep that knowledge base across the rest of our team so that everybody feels appropriate. And with this being said, a big guidepost when doing an intake for a survivor is that in addition to telling the survivor that we can stop at any time and reschedule, the same is also true for our staff. if what they are hearing is so intense for them for any reason, they can also stop it. We have to see both ways in terms of the effect that these stories have on our staff members and the attorneys in the firm. I mean, they're gripping. So we are very, very, very hands-on, and we collaborate and we meet almost not just weekly, like 2 to 3 times a week to share what we're hearing, because we want to keep it as tight and protective of these clients as we can.
Incredible work that you're doing at your firm and at Meadow Law, protecting the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
If
Thank you.
any of the attorneys watching have questions,
Please,
how do they reach out to you, to the camera?
please, you can email me at any time. I am lee@floydpc.com. You can find me on our website on either Meadow Law or Floyd Law. I'm happy to give you any advice I have.
Amazing. This was a fantastic episode.
Did I do okay for my first?
First podcast.
First podcast.
I made it through. I
Yes.
passed.
You did excellent. I was hanging on every word.
Hi, I'm Lee Floyd, and you're watching the John and Marc podcast. Please like and subscribe.